Hello, welcome back to the Currency Podcast. That's where you have arrived. That's where it is. You weren't. Now you know that for sure you didn't click on the wrong thing. If you expected to hear me and now you're hearing me, then you know that you picked the podcast, the one that I make, and it's kosher. It's very kosher. It's probably one of the most kosher podcasts. I was going to change the name to the Kosher Podcast, and I don't, I don't see why anybody would have a problem with that. I think that would be pretty discreet. That wouldn't be all that offensive. It'd be pretty kosher, and nobody should have a problem with how kosher I aim to be, how kosher I seek to position myself as. I'm probably one of the most kosher, and I was actually ranked in the top 15 most kosher podcasts according to Jew magazine. And the reason I bring that up is because they would be the authorities on kosher or not. But give yourself the freedom to say the word Jew is something I promote here. I promote free usage of the term on this podcast, and it's just that's not what you want to get into, not right in the beginning. If you say Jews too many times, then you're like an anti-Semite. So, but that's what the Jews would want it to be like, wouldn't it? But not necessarily. They don't want to be discriminated against. But that's why but then if that's true, then why do they make it a point to differentiate themselves so much? Like if you make yourself an ethno-religion, you're like, our nationality is the same as our religion. That's going to be pretty encrypting for the rest of the world, especially if you're like, well, that's true, and you have to respect us as such. You have to respect us as very differentiated and very special. But the whole world is like, they are God's people. That's not just in religious circles. That's like what they say that they are. Like, but what I'm saying is that there's no choice over being God's chosen people. Like, maybe they choose to be God's chosen people, but you wouldn't have to recognize them as that. But the whole thing is just kind of like, we aren't allowed to make fun of Jews because Jews tell us that we're not allowed to. I don't think that the world works like that. I wouldn't have thought it did. You're not allowed to make fun of them because why? I don't really get it. I'm interested in the culture, honestly. I'm not being facetious. It's an interesting culture, but why? It's like when Jonah Hill comes out and he's like, "You can't, please stop making comments about my body on social media. It's been a tough road for me to receive these comments over the years." Like, the world doesn't work like that, I don't think. No, the world isn't like, once they hear you say, "Don't make fun of me," then the world's like, "Oh, okay, we won't in any way," especially not in the way that you specifically pointed out. That's never the way that the world worked. But I guess in some areas, like if you're able to convince everybody, I mean, maybe Jonah Hill is just carrying around Jewish mentalities that if he's going to be successful at, hey, don't make fun of me for this. Like, it's pretty much always that the world is like, you don't get to decide whether or not we not make fun of you. Like, you don't get to decide that we don't make fun of you, because out of your own mouth you say we can't make fun of you, and then the world is supposed to respect that. I mean, people like Jonah Hill, so they would probably, and it's like people like Jews, so they wouldn't, but they're just afraid of looking like a murderer. But it's more just like Germans don't like Jews, I think, because they do something similar. Germans are kind of like Jews. They're almost as nationalistic or whatever. But I am German, so I could say anything about Germans. I can talk so much shit about Germans. It's fine. It just doesn't. Germans and Jews are like Christians and gays. They both do something similar, but then they hate each other as a result. Germans don't like Jews because Jews do something similar to Germans. And then they end up very competitive. It's like Pepsi and Coke or something. And it's just that Germans are always putting out into the world like this gypsy-ish thing. Like they don't stop putting out into the world that the world should be united under German rule, I don't think. They're still doing that today with the Great Reset and uh like who's more United Nations than Germany, really? People think that we have to be more like Angela Merkel, but that's what the media pushes is that um that we're not accepting of immigrants the way that Germany is. I doubt like who knows how much they even accept. It might just be a media narrative. I'm sure that they accept plenty of immigrants, but they also slowed down at some point. But the media is all American media is always trying to guilt Americans into making them think that they're the worst people on earth. That they're like, you're not anything, you're not evolved like the United Nations. You're not culturally sound. But they act like Spain is the culture to watch or something when it's like Spain is originating, like countries in Europe are originating culture when it's really like popularity originates in America. Unfortunately, sorry if you're a soothsayer for some other country. Like, well, actually, Korea is the best. Actually, Australia is starting to be a major player in pop culture. Like, they're kind of around. They're not America in terms of originating popularity and music and the things that are popular is pretty much usually generally comes out of America, and it's like being more culturally sensitive to the world is that's great, but people, you don't mean Rwanda and you don't mean Somalia, you don't mean Nepal, you don't mean Iran. Most of the cultures in the world, people who say you need to be culturally sensitive, they're ignoring most of the country's cultures. They would say you don't need to be they don't mean Mali they don't mean Mauritania. They don't mean that. They don't mean be culturally sensitive to the culture of Sudan. They're like we write those off. What they mean is you have to be culturally sensitive to Germany, and that's like this is a narrative that's pushed. This is like Germany, the United Nations owning a percentage of the American political structure. The politicians siphon off political power and currency in exchange, like compromise it for a better status on the world stage in the eyes of the United Nations. Like American politicians exchange America for instead the United Nations or like the world. They give it away to global power, and that has to happen. That happens in a world that's more connected. But this globalist rule is just like so real. It's just so raw. It's just like so global. But America is like we need to be. This needs to be brought to you courtesy of the red, white, and blue. Justice will be won, and the battle will rage. This big dog will fight if you rattle his cage. And if you put a sorry and my daddy served in the army till he lost his right eye and flew a flag out in our yard till the day that he died. And my mother, my brother, my sister, and me grow up and live happy in the land of the free. Now this nation that I love is falling under attack. A mighty sucker punch came flying in from somewhere in the back. Toby Keith is a pretty pure voice. Purity is, the word pure is just, it's not as pure if you say it pure. Pure is only pure if you're like, it's pure. Pure is so much purer than pure. Pure doesn't really get there. Pure is not very pure. Pure, 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 PPR, pure, PPR, PPR. Pass per point per reception. There's Jews, there's Germans, There's Germans, Germans, Germans. There's Germans. There's Germans, Germans, Germans. Hey, there's Germans. But America's like, we don't want it. We'll stick a boot in your ass. It's the American way. And Uncle Sam put your name at the top of his list. And my daddy served, because we have so many, like, my daddy served in the army until he lost his right eye. And then he flew a flag out in our yard till the day that he died. He wanted my mother, my brother, my sister, and me to grow up and live happy. But it's just that what you find is that Israel is putting out all of this bullshit. And it's just that you could sound really that you hated Jews, but it's so easy to, because the Jews are like, if you're even saying us, you hate us. And what's that about? Like, you're an ethno religion. Everyone is supposed to accept your God's chosen people, but just like the Jews like God. Fact. Jews love God, they love it. They want more God, but it's just the Jews like God. They're God's chosen people. They're God the Father. God the Father, and here's the breakdown for you, whether or not you choose to accept it. God the Father is man, I would think. Because people are like, is God a transgender? Actually, maybe maybe he's a hermaphrodite. Actually, maybe that's what God is. Do you ever stop to consider that God doesn't have any distinguishing genitals? Do you ever think about that God? But what I'm saying is, God the Father is probably a man. God the Son, you'd think that that's a man. It's not. God the Son, like Jesus, appeals to so many people, like both men and women. God the Father is a dick. Do you see what he does? He slaughters lots of people. That's mostly what he does. He's just kind of like, he's such a hard ass. God the Father. And Jesus is for all people. He appeals to so many people. Jesus is a man and a woman. The Holy Spirit is just a woman. But Jews like God the Father, and they like God's chosen people. And Christians like Jesus, and Jesus is both of them. I mean, he's God and man. Jesus is a both. That's what's important about what I'm saying. Jesus is both because he appeals to everybody. He's right in the middle of the spectrum. He's both of whatever it is, masculinity, femininity. He's both of them. And that's what Christians value. And that's why Christianity is so contemporary. Like, it's just that Christian theology is shaped by the world and through the ages. It evolves and is shaped by what the world thinks is true. Christianity takes its cues from the world. They aim to be popular in the world, even though they're like, we're special. They like both of them. They like the world and Jesus, but they like God and man. Who they worship is a both. It's just that you worship somebody who's a God and man. And so Christians like to be worldly and Christian. And they always have that problem where they're like, who's better? I mean, they're like, Jesus is better, but they're like, are we supposed to be in the world or of the world? Are we supposed to be, how do we be in the world? But they love being in the world because Jews aren't preaching Judaism. I mean, maybe they have Jewish missionaries. I don't know. They probably have fewer of them. It's just like, I guess I don't really know, but Christians is a part of their religion to tell everybody and be in the world to explain it. It's just like a crossover. Like you're on the periphery. You're on either side of it because you're supposed to go into the world and preach it. That's what Jesus commanded you to do because Jesus is of the world. But of course he is when he steps out of heaven to be like, I am a man too. Jesus is so worldly. And he's both God and man. And that's like, if you're a Christian, that's what you're worshiping. If you're a Jew, you're worshiping it's more about God the Father, but that end of the spectrum. And God the Father, I mean, if you're like a hardened practicer of Judaism, not that I really know, but then is there anybody worshiping the Spirit? Yeah, people are like, I'm spiritual. I think if you worship the Spirit, you're just talking about a more disintegrated God. You're talking about a God that exists as many gods, is more polytheistic. The spirit is more polytheistic than God. Jesus is halfway between that. It's like Jesus is between nothing and everything, or like zero and infinity. Jesus is a halfway. He's like um t- um, he's just that's just the way that Jesus is. Jesus rocks. Jesus rocks out. Jesus rocks out pretty hard. He really strums my guitar. Jesus makes me sing. Jesus, I just have a song in my heart is because of Jesus. I want to so this is like I'm a pastor and this is the church and you are my flock, but I'm the pastor of this church, whatever. I don't really find that analogy true because I'm not a fearless leader. Like I should be more fearless if I was really the pastor of a cult here, or I mean if I was leading a cult. But so you could compare it to a cult. You can compare anything to a cult. America is a cult. You can compare that. You could be like, oh, it's a cult. You're a cult leader. I don't really. I'm not a fearless enough leader. Like I don't take it seriously enough. Maybe. Like but it's really like if I was gonna open a church, I want to open a church called Seriously God, or it's just it's more like on the sign it's like Seriously God, Seriously God, and then people come into the church and I'm the pastor. I'm like, we should seriously do it. Like we should seriously worship God. Um, and I'm like, well, I don't know for sure if prayer works, but like we should totally do it. Like we're gonna lead it. I'm gonna open us in prayer, and I'm gonna be like talking to God, like actually. I'm gonna be like, let's like totally do it though. Let's like worship. I'm gonna talk to the King of the Jews, and um, let's like, and after that, we're gonna sing some songs like "Let's Worship Hosanna." We should totally do it. Let's like seriously worship the Nazarene. And I'm gonna like, but what I'm gonna be praying, but I'm gonna actually be talking to like the King. Like I'm gonna actually be talking, and it's gonna be like, and then I start the sermon. I'm like, let's seriously open to Philippians right now. Let's seriously do it. We should like totally the same way that other churches do. We should also do that. So it's like, let's seriously open to Philippians. So this is a serious, but like we're really gonna read from the Bible. And here's Philippians 4:13. I can do all things like seriously, I can do all things through Christ who seriously strengthens me. Seriously. This like but this is like real. This is a real verse. And this is like welcome to my church. So like we should totally like really do it. We should like really like actually worship God in here. But that happens. That's every single week. The next week you come back, I'm like, let's seriously open our Bibles. Let's seriously do it. And that's fun for me. I don't know that I'm gonna air this episode because I'm because I'm just not good enough, because I'm not worth it. Here's what I'm going through in my life. Let me tell you about my life. There's a certain way that I live up until this point in my life. I would say that, and this is so serious. Seriously, God. It's like seriously, God came down. He like seriously reigns. But like he's seriously, that's what happens in my church. Like, but he's like actually though, but he's like, but seriously, let's talk. Like he's actually, I'm gonna pray, but it's like we're actually talking to God. We're like really, but like seriously, this Bible is like this is for real. Like this is like, but like this is like really happening. This is seriously a church. This really is. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that God reigns so much right now. I'm sorry that God is reigning in my life. He's speaking through me so much that I'm telling you how seriously he reigns. Like, but seriously, like he seriously reigns. God is speaking through me. And just you get Billy Joel, and I don't know who he is really. He's besides that he's a singer. You get Troy Aikman, and who needs that? Troy Aikman just says plain thing after plain thing on the broadcast that he does. It's just all just all the Troy Aikman show. But he's just like makes it a point to say, like, he acts like he's making a big point, but he's actually saying something very plain. Troy Aikman. Joe Buck is obviously a narcissist, and that's why the left, I would say it's like leftists don't really like him, but what you fail to recognize is that he's the best baseball broadcaster of all time. So sorry. Sorry, Joe Buck haters. He's the best baseball broadcaster ever. So sorry. You can hate him all you want. And also, he's not bad at football. I don't know what people want. You want somebody like an ESPN college football broadcaster. You want somebody to bullshit you the entire time. And it's just that, did I cover anything major yet? I've covered everything I've covered is major. Everything is major. It's all major. It's all very major. It's just, everything is just not minor right now. Nothing is in a minor key. Everything is in a major key today. Everything, I'm just speaking so clearly. Oh, it's just right from my heart. It's right from my heart. It's straight from my heart. It's straight. Just fucking from, it's just, but it's just that anything that you say forward or like aggressively, people will probably catch on. Like, you could build an audience as long as you spoke aggressively. It's just people hate passivity. They hate when your opinions aren't clear. And my opinion should be pretty clear that seriously, we're gonna seriously worship God, but actually I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not really making a point. I'm just like to go back to that because God reigns a lot, because of how much God, and I'm worried about when's he gonna come back? I have a hard time, should I cook dinner or is Jesus gonna come back? Should I cook dinner or I don't really know. Well, God might come back and he might not forgive you for doing that either. He might, I don't know, for cooking dinner when it's is Jesus going to come back? When is he going to come back? Is it going to be tomorrow? I'm excited. When's he going to show up? When's he going to be here? I'm excited. I can't wait. That'll be so interesting. That'll be such a good story. That'll be such a good story that they can put on the local news. It'll be the same as right alongside that there's a new ice cream flavor, right alongside that a tree is downed because of a windy storm. It's just like when a tree goes down, that's a story, same as Jesus. That's a story. That's a story, right? Jesus comes back, that's a story. That's a story. I saw him. I saw Jesus. I saw him when he came back. That's a story. Yeah, I was there when it was trumpets blew, and then there's a lot of eyewitness accounts of it. And I was one of them. Basically everybody was eyewitness to it. Everybody was united. It was real cool. And then I had to go to work the next day though. But it's just the 40-hour work week. Labor is just forced on us, and you're forced to, I didn't even have any time to think about when Jesus came back because I had to go to work the next day. I had a late night that night. I remember I was just swamped, but then he came back and I was oh cool, so, oh nice. It's holy shit, Jesus is in the air. I was oh whoa, it's kind of like seeing a shooting star. And then all of a sudden, Jesus, then he's gone, and then you're then the world, it's kind of the team I wins the Super Bowl, and then you're oh, you keep going on the next day. When France wins the World Cup, and then you're oh, it's this big thing before this big build-up, and then you're just kind of you moved on. But obviously when Jesus comes back, it'll be pretty nifty. I bet that he is a charismatic guy. I bet he is impressive, Jesus, he's pretty talented. I bet that he would have some things to say. When Jesus came back, I bet that he'd have some things to say that you hadn't even heard before or hadn't considered. Um, it'll be it'll be really like eye-opening because Jesus is like he just kind of has that quality that's like he doesn't go away, but he appeals to so many people. He appeals to so many people. It's like I can really get on board with what Jesus is saying, what he's putting out there. But how about when Jesus was like, "Hey, hey, you over there, I see that you're casting fish. I can make you, here's what you can do if you follow me. You won't just be casting fish, you won't just be catching them. You'll be catching men and you'll be fishers of men. You follow me." And not only did he say that, but that prophecy, that's like a prophecy that was fulfilled in real time for like in real life. The Bible. Like that was actually happened because all of those men that were aligning themselves with Jesus, like they had the option to just be a dull ass fisherman and perform menial fishing activities their entire life and die and be forgotten the way everybody is on the world in the world. But they align themselves with Jesus and they're fishers of men, literally. Like how many men does Jesus collect as a result? Like he was totally right. He was totally true. He's totally serious. And how many men does he collect? And then those other men, they basically started a men farm where they collected so many men over the years. How many men and women are collected in the church that follow Jesus? Like just because these people, and they did it, they followed the rules just like Jesus laid out the rules perfectly. You follow me, and it's just an act of following. You follow Jesus, that's the best person to follow. You're going to collect followers. You're going to be like famous on Twitter. It's like if Paul was around today, he'd have like at least 400 Twitter followers. He'd have like 400 of them. If Paul and Peter were around, if Peter was around, he would have at least like 240 followers on Twitter. And by the way, followers, I don't know that I want to follow anybody. I kind of wish like it's not necessary for me to follow anyone on any platform because there's not like you'd rather be friends. Like you look behind you and there's 300,000 people following you. Oh shit. You're following me, huh? Every day of my life do you have to follow me for the next 30 years as long as just basically as long as this platform is relevant, which could be forever. You're going to be following me. These people are following you. I don't know that that's what you want. You're going to be watching all the things I say on here forever. I don't know that I want to be followed or follow anybody. Like, really, is it really necessary to follow anyone? Is it necessary? But Jesus would have like at least 1,200 followers if he was around today. But he just like started this man farm then he collected so many men over the years from like literally they were fishers of men. He's like, hey, you want to seriously collect some men? I got a few tricks up my sleeve. My name's Jesus. You want to catch some of this? If you want to really catch something, you know what I'm talking about. If you want to catch more than diseases here in these dirty lakes, you can follow old Jesus. Tell him Jesus sent you, and you'll figure it out. They'll know what you mean. Tell them Jesus sent you. They'll figure it out. Because I don't know if you heard about this, but I'm the Son of Man. Hey, it's just that like no big deal, but he's got like a bedazzled Son of Man jean jacket on. Yeah, that's right. It's in print. Suck it. Get a load of this. He turned around and showed them his jean. It's bedazzled on his back. He could turn around. It's like, yeah, pointed with two thumbs at it. I don't know if you know, but Son of Man. And then he told them to like follow or else the fish are gonna die in the river. He's like, hey, all those fish you're not even gonna be successful. You're basically just gonna you're only gonna catch dead fish from here on out. What if it was also like, what if this dual weighted statement that he made, or he's like also cursing them to be shitty fishermen if they don't follow him? Because it's kind of like you are shitty fishermen in comparison to like you could be fishers of. I mean, you have your legacy forever, like because they followed him. That's like a forever legacy just because you're like, oh yeah, I like what this guy's putting out there. But how much power does that guy have that he's just walking by and like, hey, you want to follow me? Follow me for the rest of your life, and then major legacy bonus points for you for like the end until the end of time. Your life will be a dream. You'll be a myth. How's that sound? Do you want to be a myth for all of eternity? Do you want to be remembered? I mean, for at least as long as the Pisces age is going on, because here we are. Here we are on the crux, but here we are on the precipice of a new age. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius, and that's what I'm talking about with this podcast. Currency is water. We're going to enter into a flowy, watery age, characterized by pouring of water, the Aquarius astrological sign. But literally, that's how they mark off these ages. If you believe that theory, this way of aligning things, is that the age of Aquarius is about to start. But different historians are like, they disagree on when it starts. They're like, some people think it started 100 years ago. Some people are like, it started in 1962. And then some people are like, it'll start in 2150. But basically, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. The age of Pisces is characterized by Jesus, because Jesus is all about fish. Like, how much does Jesus relate himself to fish? He's always like walking on water, but he's kind of like he's a portal to the age of Aquarius. Because Jesus is all about water just as much as he is about land. He's a man and woman. He's not actually a woman, but it's just that, like, he's both things. He's masculine and he appeals to everybody. He's both. He's totally dynamic. Like, Jesus could do anything. Jesus could do anything he wanted. He's just so there. Like, he's so right on. Like, he's so sprung. He's so lit. Jesus, the littiest. Jesus is incredibly litty, and it's an undeniable fact, because people are like, whoa, that guy really had his thing to say. Let's not forget about Jesus. Let's not forget about Jesus. Did you forget about Jesus? Hey, he's still here. Don't forget about Jesus. Maybe you should talk to him a little bit. Yeah, I was chatting it up with the Nazarene earlier for about 2 hours. Really fulfilled, really replenished my soul and my entire being. I don't know. He's just kind of like, he's so there. He's so Nazareth too. He's just like so Nazareth. I know he's got like Bethlehem overtones, but he's just very like, he's just right on. Just like, bam, boom. You're hitting on, he hits on it every time. He's just like, he just keeps hitting on that. He just keeps hitting on that. Keeps burning us with Jesus. He just keeps pulling Jesus. Oh my God. What a demolisher in the name of, he really makes good on Jesus. He really puts that, he stands behind it too. It's like, he creates this whole world with he's a genius. Jesus, he's just like, he creates this whole world with what he does. And he stands behind it. He's not afraid. He'll get all kinds of bull crap for it. He gets all kinds of shit. He does him. He's so comfortable in his own skin. He's such an original. He's so, like, he's an example. He's an example. People are like, who's an example? Who's a leader? I'm like, one of the strongest leaders I know is Jesus. He's a Mediterranean fish peddler who actually has a lot of things to say. Who actually, as it turns out, I don't know that you would do better than Jesus. I don't know. He's kind of like, he's just always doing, it's Jesus again, one more time, Jesus. And he shows up, he's like, one more time, Jesus. And he's about to show up again. He'd be like, let's bring it all back. We're bringing it back right now. No worries here. I never left. I have no problems stating my presence yet again. Here, it's coming full circle. I'm coming back. Here we are again. It's me. You miss me? Look who's back. Back again. It's Jesus, bitches. Do you see me? I'm in the sky. Do you know that? Do you know that? Do you know I'm in the sky? It's Jesus. Who else do you think would come back and now I'm in the sky floating? Who else do you think it would be? Who do you think this is? You think I'm Gary Busey? No. It's Jesus. It's not Pocahontas. It's Jesus. Jesus is in the sky. Jesus comes back to trumpet horns. Jesus is in the sky. I'm here. Who do you think it is? You gonna deny me again? Jesus always does that. He's always like, it doesn't, but it wouldn't matter that he's already like made such a name for himself. He's just like gonna generate so much buzz. He's just like a burner. He burns you. He puts himself out there too. He really takes the initiative, I would say. And he's a leader. He's a strong leader. And like, I don't know. He's an alpha. Jesus is an alpha. He's basically the king. He's basically the son of the king of the universe. It's like he's just basically like the son of, he's basically God. Like it's almost like, he's kind of like God. Jesus is like, he's like seriously Jesus. He's like seriously the king. You would go wrong to say that he wasn't God. Like he's probably like, he's totally like, when I think about Jesus, it's just that I think about how much he's changed the world, how much he's impacted individual people's lives. He came down. Do you know that? And also he had a time on earth. But he is Jesus. Is mostly he is. And it's hard to forget about it too. It's hard to forget about Jesus. Always remember, never forget. Also always remember, never forget. Don't let it slip your mind. He is the Christ. He's probably my favorite Christ is Jesus. Jesus is probably my favorite Christ. One of my favorite, but probably my favorite God. My favorite God is Jesus. Christ is one of my favorite gods. Like Jesus is kind of the Christ it's like one of my favorite Christs. Jesus Christ is the Lord, came down, and it's like Jesus, he kind of came down in Jesus form. It's kind of like when God came down, he was the Christ, and then I knew you look to the Christ. He is the Christ child. He is the Christ one. He is Jesus the Lord. He's the Lord God. He's the Jesus one. He's the God baby. Jesus is the Christ baby. He's God. He's God incarnate. God come down, heaven rain down. Jesus, kingdom on earth. Lord came down. Jesus in the form of a baby in a manger. He's that baby in a manger. He's just like, he's that Jesus. He's like that Jesus came down. He's the Christ one. Jesus Christ, the child born in a manger to a virgin, to regular human parents. Jesus Christ, the Lord, God, the King, and mostly reigns forever. Like generally, basically, he reigns forever. He's like overall, I'd say that approximately, and like my estimate is that Jesus, but he's just kind of like, it's just that, how can you go wrong? How can you go wrong? It's like buying an iPhone. You get so much with it, and the customer service is amazing. It's just that you get that whole, it's more of an experience with Jesus, I'd say. It's really more just the experience than like a set of images or like what. It's really more like the thing that people like about Jesus is more like being there, and it's kind of just that what he offers you is so much more than just like a momentary something that satisfies you temporarily. It's just that it's really like it's a relationship, and it's a brand. Like it's about that brand relationship to Jesus, and how it's about falling in love with a brand and knowing that brand takes care of you. He really just, and they do it so well over there. They have such high standards over at Jesus that it's difficult that you would argue against it. Like, yeah, there's different people you might say are better in other areas, but it's like, how could you argue who does it better than Jesus? Jesus is very, he's thought of everything, basically. He's thought of he will take care of all of the problems. And it's just like, it doesn't matter what problem you come to Jesus with, it's already part of their customer service. Like their department is already working on it. He's the king. Like, I swear to God, he's the king. No doubt in my mind. And it's just like, he's the king, he's the goat. Jesus is the goat. He's so right there. He's so right on. He just delivers, doesn't he? I think. Does he? Seriously, though. He's seriously he seriously does all of that. And he is, but take it seriously, you actually, but like for real. And that's all that I had to say, I guess. Not for actual. That's basically all that I'm saying that I could stop now. I'd be at 40. I swear to Christ, I'd be at 40 minutes and 35 seconds and I could stop at this time. And I swear to God, I can't look at the camera. This is embarrassing. I look at like myself in the thing. You probably already knew that. Like, oh, what a loser. He looks at himself in the thing. Loser. Oh well. I'm a winner in Christ, though, or whatever it is. Like, what am I supposed to say to people? Like, do you have a good story about, what's an interesting fact about yourself? I'm like, well, I was the son of the king of the universe for a while. I reigned forever for a little bit. We're the son of the king of the universe. Pretty good story, right? Pretty unbeatable story. As long as I was that for a little bit. Pretty good story. Like, I didn't totally reign forever on high with the royalist family of conceivable, imaginable. No big deal. Pretty good story, right? Interesting fact. But how unbeatable is the story? That's that story. But that story is just, I mean, it's always unbeatable. It's definitive of the age, as long as it's the age of Pisces, I think. Jesus, I mean, but not really. I don't know if that's true. I just heard about that recently. And so I'm jumping on the bandwagon. And you know, life is what you make of it, and the earth is just, but it's not really about that I'm broadcasting to an audience. It's just that I'm talking here. And the sooner that I learn that, but let me share something personal from my life. Like, I live my whole life, I feel like I don't do enough to tell people that I want to be around them. Like, literally. I'm not being facetious. Like, I think that, it's better to withhold from people that I want to hang out, and then what results is this very real thing where I actually don't hang out with as many people as I wish, and then it makes me sad that I'm lonely. It's like, I have this delusion that I'm a good person too. Like, I think it makes me a good person too. It's like I'm not interfering with anybody. Like, I'm living this way, and then it is detrimental to me. It's detrimental to my friendships with people, because I don't realize for the longest time, until recently, I don't realize that you're actually just allowed to hang out with whoever. You could be like, I'm gonna come over. And I have difficulty embracing that. And it's Christian mentalities, because Christians make it so that you're not like a commoner, that you would just show up, like you're not easy, like you would just show up at your friend's house whenever, like you're that obvious. Like, Christians are more special in the way that they give themselves over in friendships, that kind of thing. Like the occasions are more separated, rather than that you could, because in reality you could just hang out with people all the time. But I have a hard time accepting that. But now I'm like, I will live my life this way now, from now on. I will embrace it. I will just show up wherever I will and find myself, because that's what I wanted to do, because I don't like to be alone. Or it's like, I think I'm a better person, or I think that I would prefer to be alone. But now I realize that it's not that way. But it's like, maybe it was that way before, but now things are different. But now it's like everybody I know is used to me not saying, hey, I'm just going to show up. And so maybe I gave the wrong impression. And so now I'm just trying to overcome. But the kind of thing that I'm talking about is just, I'm trying to embrace a life where I accept the things that I want to do, because it has to do with standing behind a choice that you make, or like the flair and the swag that you represent yourself with. And let me tell you about the word swag. The word swag is like, there are words, people treat words like people sometimes where they're like afraid. I am a little bit afraid that the word swag thinks I'm not cool enough. Like, this is not a major problem, but I bring this up to say that people treat words this way, where it's like a word that they know, people know the slang, but they don't say it because they don't want to take on what that means, or like what kind of people it insinuates you're hanging out with, or like that what it infers about you by you saying it. People don't want the identity that comes along with certain slang. It's like everybody knows why the slang is used. They just don't, because, and then instead of that, tragically, that people have to use the excuse that, well, I'm just old. But they know why. Everybody knows why the thing is popular. But, like, the word swag is such that... But I'm talking about the process of overcoming a word. Like, and it's something like you could build up a word to be like a person, or you're like a treated, like it's somebody I'm not cool enough to be around because of the way that the word is, its characteristics. It's just like, am I really? And it's kind of like, yeah, it's like not seeing that in yourself enough to be able to say the word. Like, I think that thing doesn't thinks I'm not cool enough to use it, which is just very, it's whatever. I'm just telling you it. Stop. Shut the fuck up. Don't get on me about what I said. I'm sorry. Sorry, God. Sorry, God, for saying it. Like, I'll say something and then, like, I feel like I have to apologize to God. Sorry, God. But, like, it's to the point that I'm just walking around saying the word God a lot in my life, like a crazy person. Like, just literally when I'm alone in my apartment, I'm like, oh, I wonder if God's going to come back, just to get it out there, just to get it out of my system. Like, because that's what's bouncing around in my head. So, like, well, I hope God didn't hear. I hope God doesn't, like, I don't really think that. I'm not really like, oh, God's going to punish me. I'm just saying, like, the word is in my head so much, God, that, like, I have to get it out there. And I find that it applies to everything. Or I'm like, is God gonna, and it's really, I'm saying it so much, or like bringing it up to myself so much in regular life, that sort of to figure out what does it even represent to me, or what does it even mean when I can say it for all of the things where I'm like, is God doesn't like me for that. It's like, and it's something I'll do, I'll be like, I try to get out of it, and then the phrase I go to is like, God's not gonna like that, or something. It's like, I'm like, God's gonna come back, though. God's gonna come back, so, like, I don't have to worry about any decision I make. It's like, I say that to myself when I do something embarrassing or something stupid. I think to myself, or even utter it in some cases, like, God's gonna come back, though, or, like, God's gonna... Because that's just the catch-all for it. Anything you did, you don't have to stand behind it. It's like, God's gonna come back. But I'm, like, repeating these words, whatever. Anyway. And, I'm saying that what I find is that I have this problem where I withhold myself from other people, and people that are my friends. And it has something to do with that I make up, like, mental images. I make up things that get me out of choices I make. Get me out of having to make a choice, or like standing behind, like, this is how I represent myself. It's like, it's a fear of representing yourself. And then, just like accepting that you live in reality. Like, it's major imposter syndrome, the thing that I do sometimes. And so I get out of representing myself or standing behind a choice that I make, or like, it could be clothes I wear, it could be like a gamer tag or something, that I get an Xbox and then I do that. I get an Xbox and then you have to choose a name and a gamer tag, whatever, and then, like, well, now I have to go forward as this forever. Rather than do that, maybe I'll just make up that I play this role where I withhold myself from people. And it's kind of like playing a role, like, is the thing that I'm talking about. Like I get into this trap where I think that a role needs to be played rather than that I exist as what I am, or like I have to exist as a narrative according to other people. Sometimes I think this, and it's not just like on a podcast or anything. It's just like consistently throughout my life. And it's like if I'm playing basketball with people, like I'm not very good at basketball. And then so times that I play it, just like a pickup game, is 3-on-3. I'm not that good at it. And then in my head, it's like you have to be something. And so then I would maybe go in the direction more of self sabotage. Like the role you play is that you're the guy that fucks up everything. And so I play Rocket League online. This is like live with other people. Rocket League is a video game where you're a car and you're playing soccer with a giant soccer ball. And you're flying around the arena trying to get the ball on the goal against the other team. And I work this out to myself as I'm playing it. Like I realize that it's silly. Some of the lies that I make up in my head about I realized that that's something I would actually tend to do in real life, is that like if I'm fucking up in Rocket League, then I feel like I'm supposed to fuck everything up because you're just the guy that screws it up, rather than that I am just an individual, like I'm there the same way everybody else on the team is there. And then like a mistake isn't mean that you're the guy that everybody's blaming for anything. But it's like I think that a role has to be played, or that's just the cop out or the excuse that I could go to, because it's like I'm thinking that things are a theater or something like that. That what you have to be the narrative that it could be perceived that you are. So like I go down that road rather than the consistency of what I would do otherwise, because like I would just be doing things the way that I do it, or representing my, because partly what I'm saying is that you can't escape from representing yourself. Like just in any conversation, you are representing yourself. And like if I just embraced it, then I would just be hanging out with people more, because what myself is I'd rather be around people. Because representatively speaking, if I really was just doing what I was, rather than like trying to excuse it as something else all the time, then I would be I'd probably just be hanging out with people. Like I'd prefer that. But I'm talking about like you try to make a real change in your life, and like don't tell me that I am bad. Don't tell me that I'm good at hanging out with people, or like don't come at me and say that that's the standard, when say that you own the standards for my life. Or it's like people try to say something about themselves that's true, that's a problem, and then people are like, the rest of the world tries to talk them down and say that they're good at it. Like the rest of the world will call you a liar for saying something bad about yourself, because the world, or at least in America, they act like everybody has to be good all the time. And that it's embarrassing for you to say that you have a problem. And so it's like, if I say that, it's like people are afraid of change. They're worried that you might actually, people like to act like change can't actually happen, when it does all the time. When some major change can happen in your life over the course of a year, something that you've been trying to change forever. People act like the things you try to change forever are always the same. Or like, there's a certain amount of that where people are afraid of change, and then so everybody polices each other to say like, oh no, you're not, you're good, like you're great, and bullshit like that. And so what I'm saying is, like literally I would have that problem. And it has to do with impression. Like and it has to do with the fear of impression that people have. Like America is afraid of impression. It's a taboo. Like literally, people won't touch that. People won't touch it. It's because it's related to impressiveness and giving impressions and talent. And people are afraid of saying that they are impressive. That's what I'm talking about, partially. But it's more like impression is too dark a topic. It's too big a topic. To the point that people separate themselves from it by saying that they're always under an impression, or Like I was under the impression that, rather than that they just have impressions, because it's kind of dark when you have to admit that people influence people that harshly, that you just receive an impression, because an impression is something you have to live with. There's like something you're frozen as, it's something you're stuck with if you're really impressed. You can't control what you're impressed by. Like you can't control what you're impressed by, and what I'm talking about sort of is people think that they can control your impression or your standards. They think that they can control what you're impressed by, and if you're not impressed by them, then they get pissed. And then what they do is they try to impress you with fear. They try to make fear what gets impressed on your psyche. Like the country is afraid, or just overall in conversation, people, this is a taboo. People don't like to go into impression because, like, there's a lot of in the area of people don't like to admit that there are factors that they can't control about themselves. Like, for instance, what you're impressed by is not really something you can control, but there's like, this is something that people are worried about, that they're admitting that there's factors you can't control, like what you're impressed by. And instead of admitting that, everybody tries to control what you're impressed by. And then when you're not impressed, like, if you have like high standard for it, like, what am I supposed to do if I'm not impressed by very much? Because people do come to me with that sometimes, where they're like, oh, you're just not impressed by anything. And then, so they try to impress you with fear instead. Like, so that you are afraid, or there's something wrong with you for not being impressed. Like, but you're going to be impressed by something, and impression, unfortunately, like, you're going to be influenced, and you can't control all of what you're influenced by, or what you find and what becomes impressionable for you. And I'm saying, like, there's a fear of this because of its out of controlness, because it's so uncontrollable what you're actually impressed by. But people like to act like everybody is the same, and so you have to like all the things, or have to have the same opinions as everybody else. And it's a fear of, like, intelligence, or a fear of impression. Well, that episode started out, I'm not going to comment on it. That's never a good practice. Here's what I think about this recording. That's not going to help my cause. God reigns. Here's what does help your cause, though. Probably positive view of God. The country loves Jesus. All right? Country loves Jesus a lot. They love him. Every president that we've ever had is a Christian. The country is so Christian. Like, if you're a Christian, don't tell me that the country is against you. They're not. Every president is a Christian. Trump is a Christian. Obama is a Christian. Those people are Christians. Every politician is a Christian. Only for the sake of, like, because they're like, well, they've run their formulas, years and years and years of formulas, and they have realized that, well, you're not really electable if you're not a Christian, because the country is very Christian. It's very moral. America is a cult. It's a cult more than other countries are. But justice will be won, and the battle will rage. And, like, that's not bad. It's kind of fun. Like, that song is fun. That song is so hilarious. That's like the best song, because it's like goofy that people are this patriotic. It's like the Will Ferrell wearing like patriotic, like American flag underwear in that SNL skit. It's so funny if you're really just like, if you're open-minded about it. It's not like it's a cult or whatever, but it's not a cult isn't a bad thing. It just means that you have a specialized environment where you're separating yourself. Jews aren't bad. Germans aren't bad. Life is to be lived. And Jesus is cool. Jesus is cool. Jesus is A-okay. 2 thumbs up for Jesus. Yo, two thumbs up. No, seriously, 2 of them. 5 a handstand. Handstand for Jesus. Backflips. 4 backflips for Jesus. or round off a handspring. A triple axel. Triple axel for Jesus. Elbow bump for Jesus. Weightlifting. Squat 400 pounds for Jesus. Bungee jumping. You skydive for Jesus. Totally glory. Lots of glory for Jesus, I'd say. Just overall, probably generally, like, a certain amount of glory has been given in his direction, and he deserves it. But, racy. All right. Talk to you all on the later day of later on. I'm a cool guy. Don't say that I'm not, please. I'm cool. All right. That's how this works. Duh. Of course. That was very cool what I just did. Okay. So fuck you. All right. Bye.